The gay rights movement came about around the same time as the women's rights movement and the beginning of the civil rights movement in the 1920s. In 1924, the earliest known gay rights organization, the Society for Human Rights, was established in Chicago. From 1952 until 1973, homosexuality was classified as a mental disorder in the Diagnostics and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or DSM, which has been the resource to diagnose mental health disorders since 1952. 3 forms of aversion therapy were used to treat homosexuality. The first was electrical aversion therapy, where an electric shock was administered to the patient while simultaneously viewing a photo of a man. In 2001, one of the doctors that helped reclassify homosexuality as a normal behavior conceded that reorientation therapy could be a cure for homosexuality. The third technique used the drug apomorphine, which induces nausea to the patient. Another technique was called covert sensitization, in which disgust and images of vomit were thought to cure homosexual desire. The main goals of the movement included equal treatment and an end to job discrimination, media invisibility, and church and military discrimination. One of the most successful events of the gay rights movement was the Stonewall Riots. These riots took place on June 28, 1969, and the days that followed. They took place in Greenwich Village, New York, at a gay bar called the Stonewall Inn. A group of gay customers had grown tired of harassment by police officers and took a stand. Soon many people joined, and the riot had to be dispersed by policemen. For the nights that followed, people continued to show up at the Stonewall Inn to protest, each night the crowds varying in size. The Stonewall riots inspired LGBT people throughout the country to organize in support of gay rights, and within 2 years after the riots, gay rights groups had been started in nearly every major city in the United States. By 1970, 5,000 gay men and women marched in New York City to celebrate the anniversary of the Stonewall riots.
What's the matter with you? Do I look gay to you?
Do I look gay to you?
For the past few decades, gay rights supporters have been seeking acceptance and legal equality. The movement and its activist groups are widely recognized for their numerous protests and pride parades. Although the gay rights movement is not solely supported by people of homosexual orientation, there are many homosexual activist groups involved in the movement. American Civil Liberties Union is well known and is arguably the most active group today, while the Human Rights in Chicago, Mattachine Society, Daughters of Bilitis, and San Francisco Gay Democratic Club were some of the first groups to initiate the movement. International Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission and the Student Hemophile League both work to spread support and awareness where it is greatly needed.
Key people. Bayard Rustin was an openly gay civil rights activist, principal organizer of the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, and advisor to Martin Luther King Jr. Cleve Jones conceived the names Project AIDS Memorial Quilt and worked with Harvey Milk, who was the co-founder of the San Francisco AIDS Foundation. Andy Thayer is an American socialist and gay rights activist and co-founder of the Gay Liberation Network. Shelley Wright was the first openly lesbian country music singer. Key events. 1924, the Society for Human Rights in Chicago becomes the country's earliest known gay rights organization. 1962, Illinois becomes the first state in the U.S. to decriminalize homosexual acts between consenting adults in private. In 1979, 75,000 people participated in the National March on Washington for lesbian and gay rights in Washington, D.C. In 2000, Vermont becomes the first state in the country to legally recognize civil unions between gay or lesbian couples. January 10, 2014, the Obama administration announces that the federal government will recognize the marriages of 1,300 same-sex couples in Utah, even though the state government has currently decided not to do so. Art during the 1980s. Jesse Helms, who was a famous gay artist, increased visibility and the socially directed nature of his art subject matter. Sexuality and identity, repression and power, commodities and desire. Much of the artwork during this time period would show gay activities in a sculpture, or would be photographs mostly by gay artists or supporters of the gay rights movement. Music during the 1980s. Music became more suggestive and expressive of gay activities during the gay rights movement in the 1980s. Songs like I Know What Boys Like, Johnny Are You Queer, Dude Looks Like a Lady, It's Raining Men, and The Charming Man. These songs became well known for their suggestive lyrics. Films during the 1980s. During the 80s, films became more focused on sexuality and sexual orientation. Some of the famous movies during the 1980s include Brokeback Mountain, Rocky Horror Picture Show, The Boys in the Band, Philadelphia, which was a movie about AIDS.
The fact of the matter is, when they fired Andrew Beckett because he had AIDS, they broke the law.
Longtime Companion, and The Birdcage.
Well, what kind of opposition is the gay rights movement facing that makes it impossible for gay rights to exist? Homosexuals have faced heavy opposition against their fight for equality from religious groups, the public's intense apprehension of the AIDS outbreak in gay men,
And ladies and gentlemen, the illness I'm referring to is AIDS.
homophobia and the public's fear of homosexuality, and even legislature that makes it illegal to be homosexual or participate in homosexual acts. One of the oppositions the argument for same-sex marriage faces is that it is not marriage. Marriage is the legal union between a man and a woman stated by both religion and law. This decision led to the institution of civil unions. A civil union is similar to marriage, but it is not equal. An Ohio judge claimed that banning same-sex marriage violates the very basis of the United States Constitution, as it inhibits a civilian's right to pursue happiness and actually creates an inequality between citizens.
Until the age of loss of values and loss of common sense, marriage has been between a man and a woman.
A marriage was originally defined as the basis for a family. Only after a proper marriage could be formed could a proper family begin. In a same-sex marriage, if a child is either conceived or adopted, it is always denied either one or both of its biological parents present in its immediate family. This is said to have a negative association with the way that it grows up and can also impact the child for the rest of its life. The largest opposition gay rights and same-sex marriage faces is the belief that homosexuality is against natural law, and in many religious texts is said to be offensive to God and unforgivable. Many religious leaders belonging to groups similar to the Westboro Church go as far as to protest funerals and pride parades in order to protest gay rights.
Gay rights continuing today. 2014, January 6th, the United States Supreme Court blocks any further same-sex marriages. The fight for gay rights continues today because only 17 states legalize same-sex marriage, while in the other 37 states, this act remains illegal.